At this moment of thanksgiving, His Majesty the King speaks to his peoples and his fighting forces throughout the world.
Today, we give thanks to God for a great deliverance. Germany, the enemy who drove all Europe into war, has been finally overcome.
Just days after victory was declared, whilst everyone was still celebrating, Churchill surprised his chiefs of staff by ordering a plan to be drawn up, inquiring whether an Anglo-American force could hold back the Red Army, who were advancing through Europe. The plan was given the name Operation Unthinkable, and it would plunge the world back into another long and brutal war, just weeks after one of the worst in history had finally come to an end. But why would Churchill want this? Well, it was no secret that he despised communism with a passion. To use his own words,
"Everyone can see how communism rots the soul of a nation, how it makes it abject and hungry in peace, and proves it base and abominable in war."
Furthermore, Churchill felt a deep mistrust towards Stalin and resented the fact that the Russians had marched into Berlin unchallenged by the Allies. Plus, many Soviet troops remained in Western Europe, and Stalin had already gone back on promises issued in the Yalta Conference by advancing west, establishing puppet governments as he went along that were only loyal to Moscow. Churchill was also emboldened by the US's successful atomic bomb tests. Others, however, questioned Churchill's motives. Chief of the Army Sir Anthony Eden likened Churchill to a warmonger and stated that he was longing for another war. Operation Unthinkable is perhaps best looked at in two manifestations, the first being offensive and the second being defensive. The initial plan's aim was, quote, to impose upon Russia the will of the United States and the British Empire, and even though the will of these two countries may be defined as no more than a square deal for Poland, this does not necessarily limit the military commitment. For any offensive plan to be effective, the element of surprise would be essential, and it would require 47 British and American divisions to catch the Soviets off guard in Dresden, right in the middle of the Russian lines. Of the 47 divisions required, 14 would have to be tank divisions, and this amounted to almost half of what was available to the Allied forces at the time, roughly 100 divisions in total. The offensive envisioned was a two-pronged attack, with half the divisions heading to Stettin and the other half to Poznan. The proposed attack, however, was ruled unfeasible, largely due to the Soviet forces outnumbering the Western Allies in men to a ratio of 2.5 to 1. The Soviets also had twice as many tanks. Because of this, Polish forces and up to 100,000 Wehrmacht soldiers would have to be drafted in to bolster numbers. A preliminary date given for the attack was the 1st of July 1945, just 4 days before the UK general election. Success of an offensive operation would be down to surprise alone, something which quickly became nullified due to the extensive spy network in London at the time, which had reported back to Moscow that Field Marshal Montgomery had been ordered to stockpile captured German weapons in case they were needed for future use. If the surprise was a failure, the Allies would be committed to a protracted state of total war. On May 22, 1945, the plan was deemed too hazardous, General Sir Alan Brooke saying the chances of success are quite impossible. On the 8th of June 1945, another, more defensive approach was inquired for Operation Unthinkable. This was expressly concerned with, quote, what measures would be required to ensure the security of the British Isles in the event of war with Russia in the near future. It was concluded in this draft that Britain would need America's complete and total support, something which the US could not offer because they were committing military personnel for an invasion of Japan. It was instead envisioned that Britain would use its air force and navy to resist the Soviet advancements. This was a huge blow for Churchill, and he wrote in the margin of the draft that an attack on the Red Army was a highly improbable event. All this planning amounted to nothing, however, as Churchill was defeated in the UK general election that took place on the 5th of July 1945.
The Labour Party's great victory shows that the country is ready for a new policy
to face new world conditions.
This being said, Operation Unthinkable was not totally done and dusted. 1 year later, the plan was dug out from the vaults by the Americans, as the Soviet threat had continued to grow. This was enough for some people to think of Churchill as a Cold War prophet.